Thank you. Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Here.
Mrs. Boer? Here. Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Swager?
Here. Mr. Dixon?
Yes, good evening, folks. Good to see everybody on such a wonderful looking evening. And like to welcome, first of all, to the lectern, Mrs. Shannon Cox. She's our student support personnel specialist in our high school. She has been very active, along with Jenny Herr, in the middle school in bringing about a program which the boards are familiar with from a December proposal regarding suicide, signs of suicide. So we've asked Shannon to come here this evening, give you an update on how it's gone this year and any future plans going forward. Shannon?
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Dixon. And I want to really extend a huge thank you, heartfelt, to all of you for supporting us in bringing this program and allowing us to partner with Mental Health America to bring this support here to our students. I feel very deeply that this can be very impactful to our students, both short term and to our whole system long term. So I just want to extend that thank you, first of all. We were able to, with the Signs of Suicide program, Ms. Christina Pena, who is the person with Mental Health America, who goes out to all the schools in Lincoln County to participate in this program and presents. She came to us and she was able to present to 371 of our students. We worked with our English teachers and we were able to visit with our kids both in person as well as through our JLA remote learners. And one of our fantastic staff took the time to take every single document that Christina had and turn it into a Google form to allow our remote students to participate just as fully as our in-person students did. Through that process, we identified about 44 kiddos that really needed a little extra follow-up. And I want to say that kids are not dumb, right? They know that if they answer certain questions in certain ways, that probably means that somebody's going to come have a chat with them. And so I really consider that this was an opportunity that our children took to raise their hand and say, yes, there is something going on. And of those 44 kids, we were able to speak to some young folks that were on no one's radar. So these were not kids that were previously known to me as a student support specialist, previously known to our school counselor, or maybe previously known to a teacher who kind of keeps their eyes out. There were a couple of instances where I learned that back in October, we had really close calls with kiddos that were on the cusp of making a very long-term decision because they were in a place and they did not feel that they had the support, they did not feel that they had what they needed to survive. I was incredibly grateful to have these interactions with these young folks. They were so genuine and they were so authentic in saying thank you. Thank you for listening. Yes, I knew somebody was going to come talk to me, and I'm not sad that I had this conversation. As the result of this intervention, I also had about 5 students who came to me and said, gosh, we heard that presentation and I know somebody in my friend group who's ticking off these boxes for me. How can you reach out to them? And so we were able to intervene in a couple of instances where, again, a kiddo that wasn't on a radar and a person that did not choose to raise their hand through this process for whatever their internal reasons were, but then we were able to extend that opportunity to them as well. And they were likewise very open, genuine, authentic, and appreciative. And in fact, a couple of them have continued to maintain their contact with me over the past several weeks. So I consider that to be yet another win, right? Because we're able to maintain the contact. Several of our kiddos turned 18 over this past year, and they weren't sure what to do as adults emerging into the world. And so this allowed us to get conversations started about how do you take care of yourself. So now I've got young adults who, as the result of this intervention, are now taking ownership of their own healthcare, reaching out to healthcare providers, establishing their own teams, and participating in their own wellness in a way that they hadn't before. So again, I really, really appreciate that we were allowed to have this opportunity because I believe it's paid dividends. Because of the success, Ms. Pena says that she can come back to us. And we worked out kind of a system with her where we hope that in the fall, we are going to be able to have her meet with our juniors and in the spring term with our freshmen. That way, at least twice in a student's academic career, they're going to get this very explicit information and participate in the screening. And every year, students are going to see Ms. Pena in our building, a representative of Mental Health America in our space. They're going to come to know her. This is going to help us with the overall project of destigmatizing asking for help. Because what might it have looked like if those kiddos back in October had not felt shamed, had really felt that they knew who they could go to. And we were able to intervene before they got to that place where we almost had a catastrophic event. So that's what we're working towards. And I believe that by participating in this, we are going to be much safer as a system, and our kids are going to have a greater level of well-being. So thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions at all, I would be happy to answer them. Yes, ma'am.
What is the next step when you identify someone who's obviously been unknown to you previously?
Mhm.
What's your next step? How do we help those kids? Do you stay with them? Do you put them in a program? Do you make the phone calls? Do the parents make the phone calls? Who
It's
does that?
very individual, so I'll meet with the students, and then a vast majority of the time, our parents are safe people to reach out to and include in this process, so we're going to include them in the process pretty much immediately. And after we talk to the students, what's going on, engage the parent, and then I'm going to share with that parent all of the community resources that we have. So we have developed a packet that includes everything that we know about in Licking County and everything that I'm aware of in adjacent counties and service centers. And so I'm going to offer the parents, I can send this to you, I can sit down with you and examine what you think might work. We can talk about what is your insurance and how do you access that so that they are able to take advantage of our community resources, but also the resources that they have available to them through employer-based insurance or whatever insurance they might have. So it doesn't always come from us, but we help guide them to that process of what's going to be most meaningful. If there are kids that we do need to stay more in contact with because it does impact their academic performance, then we will look at what does that mean for that student. And we also always want to include parents in that conversation because I'm not going to continue to have something of that level of contact with a kid if parents are not engaged in that. If there's a concern about if the parents are safe people to have included, then I'm going to loop in my other support staff, Ms. Merrill, Mr. Busenberg, Ms. Travis, and we're going to figure out what's our next best step. Who else do we have in our community that's going to help us make sure that this student stays safe?
Have the students been, or the parents been generally receptive in that there must be some parents who had no clue that their student was, or their child was that
I can't say that there were
concerned?
very many parents that didn't have any clue. They're just parents that hadn't gotten to the point of establishing what support was going to look like.
Mhm.
Again, I want to go back to this is an issue that's very much stigmatized. And so knowing that my kid is in that part of the place, it can sometimes be hard for parents because then that means, well, what did I do wrong? Where did I feel? So it's very gentle to try to offer them the linkage to supports without them in any way feeling judged or shamed for the experience that their child is having. So most of them are incredibly grateful to have a conversation. Many of them have been incredibly grateful to have the resources because they didn't know some of the resources that existed. And the kids who are 18 were just unaware. And so now they know and they can be more engaged with their own healthcare.
Great. Keep up the good work.
I think this is really awesome and happy to see it in our schools. Is there any conversations with Ms. Pena, or has this been provided at a middle school level? Does that seem appropriate? Have there been talks about expanding it?
That is something that is being worked on with our middle school. Absolutely. Mrs. Her and Ms. Almendinger are working on their schedule, how to most effectively, incorporate that into their building and what that's going to look like, because absolutely we want to extend this to as many of our young folk as we possibly can.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you.
I think this is a great program. And one of the questions I had
was that when you're a freshman entering into high school, would it be better to meet with the incoming freshmen in the fall due to all of, it's such a big change from middle school to high school? There's a big jump and there's a lot more expectations put on them. Do you think there's too much pressure in their freshman year that maybe we should do it in the fall rather than the spring? We're looking at Ms. Pena's schedule. We're also looking to next year that our 8th graders will have just gotten this. If we're successful and we get all this wrapped up this year and this all bigger, they will have just gotten the information. One of the reasons we looked at the springtime for freshmen is that sophomore year for kids is really challenging. Sophomore year is when a lot of stuff hits. And so that's when a lot of the more challenging coursework comes up. That's where, oh my gosh, I'm actually in high school. This matters. And so what we found in our rollout this year was our sophomore class was the one that demonstrated the most need. And so before they go into the grade level that we know has the greatest impact on them, then we wanted to arm them with that information right at the end of the semester, say, hey, catch the things that we need to catch before they leave as freshmen so that we can make a plan for success as they come back to us as sophomores. That's great. Thank you for explaining that too.
I might add that the Village of Johnstown has called together a number of stakeholders in the community for a conversation to be held. That's going to be May 19th from 7 to 8 village offices, and I really appreciate them reaching out to us. And Shannon, as well as her cohort at the middle school, Jenny Herr, will be participating in that to share what we've done so far at the schools and offer any help that we can. This is a conversation for the broader community, and we really appreciate the village bringing this topic up as well. I know we have a few members from our village here tonight, so thanks for carrying on that conversation. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You answered my questions, but so much so that I'm intrigued and would look forward to visiting your class and seeing your materials.
Yeah, just let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Next item we have this evening, Doug Leonard is here from the village. And Mr. Swager may be aware of some of the planning that's going on with the committee relative to the 4th of July celebration. And there's a lot of interest in hosting that celebration here on school grounds. You know, in the past, we've been able to have folks come in and sit in our stadium and view the fireworks, which are shot from down in Chambers Field area. And this year, the committee is looking at some other types of activities, and Doug's here to kind of share the broader view. And what we're after tonight is, if the board's okay, we can move forward with planning on these types of activities. It's a holiday weekend. We may need to have some staff and personnel issues, but Doug is here this evening to ask questions and spark a conversation. So Doug?
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks for
Dixon.
being here.
Yes, I'm here representing the Village of Johnstown this evening for the Events Committee. I know last year was a very trying time for everybody. It's kind of old hat now to say COVID-19 kind of really put a wrench in everything, but it did for the 4th of July. So this year, we would like to actually make that celebration bigger. And we're here this evening to ask a few questions from the school board. And I'm not sure, Mr. Swager, did you forward that on to all the other members?
I just got it sent it to Dale to get some answers on some of those questions, and I figured we'd all hear it tonight and go
Okay.
over it.
Great, we can just go through them real quick, is that right? Okay.
Yep.
So I know I had a conversation with you, Mr. Swager, about the agreement that was in place between the school board and the village for last year. My question is, would that still stand for this year?
Yeah, I didn't see, this is to let people sit in the stadium like we talked last year, since it got canceled. Then it was September, then it was January, as I think everyone knows. So I don't think there's any objection on our side.
With using that, and we appreciate that, would the school board be okay? We've reached out to the Licking County Health Department to see what the actual percentage would be that's allowable in the stadium. Now, the school board may know from Friday night football games, if you have that percentage now, is that something that can be shared to us so we know? I think we're anticipating the same maybe outcome this July as what we had for football games.
Well, Doug, it might be a little better than it was for football at this point in time. Again, we don't know what we don't know going forward with what's happening with this virus, but all indicators would be currently for outdoor sports in our stadiums, they do not have the percentages requirement as they had in the fall. Those have been lifted as of now. We still have a 25% maximum capacity within the buildings, such as plays, basketball games, everything inside because the different, you're inside and containing the air. So outside right now, they do not have a particular percentage. We're certainly hopeful this continues to improve. But for outdoor events, all that we have to go on right now is what's being put out for graduations and proms, which basically say, you can work to capacity, legitimate capacity, but we still encourage you to stay 6 feet apart. Derek, are you learning anything different?
It's not an encouragement requirement. 6 groups of no more than 10. Each group has to be at least 6 feet.
That's how we're setting up for graduation now.
Skipping rope and bleachers and then between parties.
That would be another question then. Would we be able to maybe get some help from some members at the stadium to make sure that that is enforced if need be?
Well, being a holiday weekend,
Yes.
we would have to solicit volunteers who would be able to come in. And that's really the answer for a number of these questions.
Sure.
Doug.
Yeah.
It'd be a volunteer type of thing. We do have maintenance, limited maintenance that work on the weekends that could help us out with some of the questions like you had on lighting.
Sure.
Making sure it goes out for the fireworks and back on,
Right.
and all that type of thing. For some of these things, you're going to want some electric. And so we can work with you on those types of details and plans. But as far as the capacities and seating, you probably need to have a good number of volunteers to help. We're actually using electronic ticketing for our graduation, where there will be we're assigning areas to families, groups that are coming in.
Okay.
But for this, it'd be kind of a come one, come all, and somehow marking off, because you're allowed to keep, here's the challenge. You're supposed to stay 6 feet apart. Now that can be family pods or family groups that sit 6 feet apart. So how do you go in prior to not knowing who's coming in and know which families are coming
Sure.
to mark it off?
Yeah.
So it becomes more of plan your best, put signage up, tell them what the rules are, and then it's a policing matter to make sure people are following and in compliance.
Yeah, and with that, that's something that Ben and I talked about in the last events committee. Would it also be possible to use the space between the football field, I guess the old practice field is what we know it as. Would that be available to have people sit there as well?
That's what I'm going to defer to the
All right, so
board
that's
a little
little
bit
trickier.
because we
In
have,
my mind, that's a little trickier because we just seeded and we just
Yeah.
plugged it to try to get the grass to grow because we're having problems with grass growing over there.
we've had a
Bunch of
lot
lawn
of
chairs.
undulations
Right.
and
We just spent
missing
quite a bit.
grass, so
Yeah.
we've had it aerated, seeded,
Okay.
we're fertilizing, we're trying to get that back so it's a safer field. It's too hard right now. So we're trying to make that a safer field for our players. So where in the past we've had games and things like that, Doug, that would probably be discouraged. I'm not going to say, we go so far as say they can't put some blankets out, but we'll have the stadium open for
Right.
seats. We'll have the tiers open. And the visitor stands would be open. Actually, the bandstands could be sat upon to watch.
Yeah, the one thing we need to watch there, and Chief Haroon is here with me and knows a little bit more about the security of that,
I
but
was going to say, is the visitor side in the fallout area or anything? Do we
it
have
could very well be, depending on the size
the
of
shell?
the shell, tells you how far away you have to be from the launch point.
Right.
So the visitor stands very well could be within that zone where no one would be allowed to sit.
So I would also encourage you when you're looking at your fallout zones, to make sure it is well away from any potential for items falling on the field itself. That is a nylon field.
Yep.
And if those particles fall, it has been known to burn the turf.
Okay.
So we
And
want to
that's
make sure the fallout zone is
Yeah.
far enough away.
Well, I guess that's my question, Doug. If you're on Chambers Field, are you guys going to try to, is that where you're shooting them off of, is Chambers Field? Is that the intention? The lower
No, it would
softball?
be behind, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's behind the JYAA facility, back in the soccer field, back in the corner.
It's gonna be in the JYA field, way back where that Fremont is. And there's the largest shell that we're gonna shoot is gonna be 5-inch shell. What we're looking at is launch side with a radius of 500 feet. With that 500 feet, it's not gonna be close at all. It basically from that given distance, it can
All on
I would say
JYA.
the radius is most likely 800 to 900 feet. So we're kind of looking at the venue, looking at the area. As we grow larger in the community, I am also taking a look to see if we move up to a 6-inch shell, what does that affect? If we move up to a 7-inch shell, what does that affect? So if we give a more spectacular display, how does that affect the venue? Are we still able to have it in this area? Areas. I've looked at multiple different areas within the venue in Johnstown, and I think this is the best site. I think it's easy to get in. I think the egress is also easy to, especially if I bring when we had to go out and then put officers in the venue in Johnstown. Ideally, I'm here today because I'm going to talk about the safety report and answer any questions the board may have about safety. It's my goal to create the safest event that I possibly can. Almost every single aspect has to be I will do it myself, and I created a very sophisticated ops plan, which is like having
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you, Chief.
I guess, Doug, one question I would have is if we do get concerned, are there other measures you can take? Can we wet down the track or wet down the turf ahead of time? You know, we do that in a lot of the other ones where we wet this. All you're going to do is get a blowing ember or something coming over. I mean, that's really what you're worried about.
Sure.
I don't think our track is very concerning.
Susceptible. No,
Yeah, I
it's
don't
not
think
a-
that's
Now,
very-
track is more sensitive than any kind of traffic
Yeah,
of any
right.
kind, even.
So it's really the
Well,
turf
The other
area.
thing then is we have the unpredictable weather. Which way does the wind blow that night? You know, that could really be a concern. And certainly, we don't want to ruin the turf in any way.
The legislature just was kicking around today whether we would have a continuation of mask wearing outside. And should it be 3 feet? Should it be 6 feet? Who knows by July 4th what it's going to be. So I think we need to stay flexible. But the cooperative spirit right now between the board and the community and trying to provide fireworks, it's just a matter of what are the last guidelines that we've been presented with and how can we conquer them?
Yes, ma'am, and that's why we reached out to Licking County,
Sure.
Health Board and Board of Health and asked them, for a little guidance.
Sure.
They have not responded yet. We were hoping that we would have a response before I came in this evening, and justifiably so. I know they're real busy, so
They haven't voted on that last
Right.
mask, the elimination of mask outside. So I
So
don't
a
know
couple
about
other
the 3
things.
feet.
I'm sorry.
I don't know about the 3 feet or no masks or
Okay.
whatever, so.
And then a couple other things about the stadium, and then we'll move on from there. We are going to do, we're thinking about doing maybe the Little Miss Firecracker prior to launch. So would we be able to use the speaker system?
That would probably involve, and I correct me if I'm wrong, board, on your feelings
No,
here.
you're right. We need
It
somebody
would-
qualified
We
to
would
run
need to
it.
have some of
Sure.
our trained personnel to use
Yes,
that equipment.
absolutely.
We
So
have put
that's-
significant dollars into equipment in that press box, so audio, video equipment, so long as we had the school personnel who are trained to be able to do that,
We'd be okay with
I think we could work, but we'd have to
Okay.
ask for volunteers to be able to do that.
that. Okay.
That's with any on-field microphones as well. We do have that capacity. That's not a problem, the capacity, but having personnel to run it is what we
Sure.
have to check out for you.
Yes.
And it kind of dovetails in with, you had mentioned in your questions, the possibility of a DJ.
Mhm.
And you also mentioned the possibility of closing down Chamber Way.
Yes.
Were you thinking about potentially having some activities perhaps on the lower high school parking lot or
Well,
the upper
we
parking
were
lot?
thinking what would be nice is if we could actually have some food trucks, local food truck vendors here as well. The program would be possibly the Little Miss Firecracker. We were thinking maybe could the Big Red Band do a performance and possibly maybe even the choir do something. I know a lot of those students weren't able to do anything last year. They were very limited on what they did last year. And we certainly want to see their talent as well. But the food trucks, we were thinking, and that's where Chief could better explain when he talks about a little about the security, is if we had Chambers Way closed off, we could actually have the food trucks set there along one side of Chambers Way, allowing still, if you had an emergency situation, the outflow of traffic going out of Chambers. So that was one possibility, and that's a big request from us. If, you know, we'd love for you folks to talk about it amongst yourselves. And if you could share,
Yeah.
Mr. Dixon, if you could share the questions with everybody, that'd be great.
I'd be happy to. And also and I'm keenly aware of the thoughts relative to our practice field, because that's where they used to put bounce houses and
Sure.
activities. It was a picnic atmosphere. We are sensitive to that field because we are trying to improve that for the athletes in the name of safety. And that's where I'm kind of trying to understand what would be closed off, because perhaps there's some room on pavement across the street, high school, down over the lower lot, where perhaps some DJing, dancing, food trucks, that type of thing could happen. But I think further discussion with details with your committee, I'd be happy to represent the board's view and poll them on some of these issues you've asked,
Okay.
and maybe a separate
That'd be
meeting
great.
where we sit down and just hash out the details.
I guess,
From
from,
to the liaison like we always do.
yeah, I mean, is there any opposition to anything from the board here? I
There's
mean,
no opposition,
No,
but
it's
I
just working
have
out the details.
the parking. Where are they going to park if you close down Chambers?
So I think
Way?
you bring, I mean, I guess, Chief, if you want to talk, but I'd assume you'd bring them in Searfoss. We'd still park in front of the high school. They just wouldn't come in and out of Chambers. You just let that parking come in and out the normal way like we do for middle school traffic.
Right, so even that middle school entrance, the one that's the exit only, we're even gonna block that
Yeah.
off. So
Yes.
basically, we're gonna make it where it's one way in, one way out. There's gonna be all that traffic as far as parking and stuff. I think from a safety aspect, closing that road right behind us is gonna be the safest thing to do, because there's gonna be a lot of people on foot. If we can limit the direction and the amount of traffic that's coming into the area, we can create safety.
Would you anticipate any parking in the high school area?
Absolutely. And according to the launch site, we can actually have seating all the way around here, and even in a baseball diamond, if you guys were to accept it, they would be able to go down that far. With that said, I know that we want to preserve the way the track looks and the way the field looks, so the officers would prohibit anybody from being in this particular area. But there's plenty of space around, like even the backside of the school. However, we feel if they were to go sit in the band area where the band practices, pretty much right across the, or right behind the municipal building, we feel that the building itself would kind of like block the view.
Yeah.
Especially those lower ordinances that are not going to reach as high, they're going to miss a lot of that. So we want to try to get as many people as we can to get in front of the school, so that way they can enjoy the entire display.
How would we fill this lot, I guess? Would they come in the back? We got two Chambers ways, just to make sure you guys. We've got
Right,
the
so-
one next to the board office and the one that comes behind
Caswell,
the
so it's
municipal.
pretty much right where Caswell is. It's going to
Yeah.
be shut off right there, and it's going to run all the way to the school.
Okay.
And we would like to get some food trucks in there. Maybe they'll happen, maybe they won't. I don't know, because that's still very fluid for us right now, and actually securing it. And we're doing on a day that everybody else is doing the same Independence Day celebration. So securing those trucks, I don't know. What I can tell you is in the egress plan, in order to get these cars out, there's going to be an officer that's going to be stationed at the entrance of the school, right where Main Street is. They're going to let vehicles go both north and southbound on Main Road. They're going to have the priority, which means that as soon as the display's over with, they're going to get those cars out. They're going to send them up to Jersey Street and then out to Main Street where we meet the four-way where Town Square is.
Mhm.
Once that starts to back up and that officer sees them, they're going to force them to turn left onto Jersey. Once they get on Jersey, there's no stop signs, there's no traffic lights that would prohibit their movement. Now, likely what they're going to do is likely turn down Oregon and Williams, but it's going to take time for those streets to back up. And that time, Main Street will kind of ease up a little bit, and that officer will start to allow them. Some of the challenges that we're going to run into is going to be JYAA because they're going to have their own area. People are going to park in that area. However, us as the Village of Johnstown, we do not have a venue there. We have a venue for Johnstown, so that is going to be the sheriff's office if they'd like to patrol that particular area. We want to try to keep people in a centralized location where we can keep them as safe as we possibly can, and I can basically have the most amount of officers to keep people safe. And I also would say for fire and EMS too. For the first year ever, we're going to actually have a police tent. I'd like to put that police tent right in the area where the concession stand is on the little paveway.
On the asphalt there?
Yep, and it does a couple of things. Number one, it's going to be housed by an officer, so if anybody has an issue, they can go find an officer immediately and report that issue. If they have lost and found items, they can return it into that particular location. And if they're missing a child or a child is lost, they can report that location for safety.
The lost parent tent.
Well, hopefully they can. We're going to put it on social media enough that like, here's what our traffic pattern is.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to come and watch the fireworks safely, this is where the most police presence is going to be. We have the plan to get you out of the venue as fast as we possibly can, and we have a place there. So if you lose something or lose somebody, we can take care of your needs there.
I did speak to the booster groups. They would be interested in opening the concessions if we, if we do something in the stadium. The boosters said they would like to try to staff that, and they'd limit. We could talk about that, but they'd limit based on what kind of food trucks you're bringing in. They'd like to sell, your sodas, your candy, your popcorn, that type of event.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I heard some feedback on it, and initially I thought they'd be competitive, but I don't think they're going to be competitive at all. And I thought that's what basically the concern was on the booster end, is that, hey, we feel like maybe those food trucks will be competitive with us, but I don't think they're going to. I think it's going to be an apple and orange comparison,
Yeah.
just like you said.
Is the Catholic Church lot available? Is that something anybody has contacted to see if they will allow? That may alleviate some parking congestion.
So yes, we're kind of looking at that too. And then there's a lot of people that are going to drop people off
Right.
with the expectation to pick them up afterwards. So we're going to create like a reunite location at the municipal building, so they can walk over there to the municipal building, which is going to be a lighted parking lot with cameras, and then they can safely unite with those people and then exit where they're not bringing them. Basically, we don't want people to come in here. Once everybody's leaving, we don't want them to come in. So we're pretty much stopping them from entering. They have to exit. And it's basically my goal is to get the whole thing out within 20 minutes. And then we're also kicking around ideas. When exactly do we tell people to leave? When the last thing goes boom, do we have a switch and kick the lights on and that's the sign to go, and then everybody starts ushering people to leave the venue, or do we allow them to stay for 30 minutes to enjoy the food trucks a little bit longer? So that way maybe the concession gets a little bit longer of a kickback. Maybe the food trucks get a little bit longer of a kickback. And then we actually just draw a line, so then that way we can get people off the property so we can start the cleaning process.
When would you envision this starting? What time of day?
That's a good
To
question.
allow access. We close access until that time.
I think that it really comes down to how much of a conversation are we going to have when it comes to Little Miss Firecracker? How much conversation are we going to have about the DJ? And I think that if we start to build these small things up, it will kind of push that time back. So I'm thinking maybe 5, 7. That's also kind of fluid.
The
right?
3rd is on a Saturday, so we don't have, there's nothing, July 3rd, nothing major is going to be going on at this facility. So the
Right.
time, I don't think affects us.
No, I mean,
It's-
from a standpoint of making sure we can get the personnel lined up.
Right.
And then also.
I guess the
wanting Miss
venue and what they're-
Firecracker, where is that? Is that proposed for in front of the stands or
It
down on the
is.
track?
Yeah, it'd be right there on the track, right down on the track facing the stands.
So we'd want to cover the track there or get something down. I guess those are all the things we'd have to talk about and work out, like what exactly does the Little Miss Firecracker event entail? What are we looking at there? And then, just getting into those details. But I guess I'm not hearing anything here that's alarming to me other.
The only issue that I would have is who's going to clean up after it's all over? Because, when we have a football game, we always have parent volunteers, right? And even after a football game, as a parent, we get bags and bags of trash, okay? And if you're going to open this up beyond just the concession stands, you're going to have food trucks, there could be trash scattered across the entire campus. So how do we manage that?
Can we get some volunteers that need
Yeah, I know,
volunteer
it's
hours?
all, we're
The
gonna
high
have to have
schoolers who
all
need some
We
volunteers.
have
hours.
students that need volunteer hours.
Right, that's,
But we need an
and I
army
think
of
Ms. Thomas is
volunteers,
right.
I believe, to pull this whole thing off. We have to have an army.
We have to have it secured.
Do
I
we-
think you're correct. And I agree with Ms. Thomas on that I know Al, and you know that I know that
Yeah.
a lot of the students here need the volunteer hours. I'm thinking that we could probably get somebody to coordinate that off the events committee and actually sign off on their volunteer hours. The more the merrier, but we could also make sure that we have the trash bags and things that we need to collect all that and pick it up.
Yeah.
But that is a concern,
It-
Mr.
all
Bennett,
of
is-
these are, we have to have all these volunteers issues, tremendous, I think, with different activities.
Or we have to assess the people who have the concessions. And there has to be some way we can, if we can't get volunteers, we have to pay for this service, right?
Somehow
It's got to get
Yeah,
done.
set
Well,
up
I
in the
think with
proper
having the
hands as well
reunite
as
location where parents can pick the kids up at a separate location. I know I myself as a parent, when I drop them off to do volunteer hours, going back into the venue when they're leaving is always difficult. So I really like the reunite if they're volunteering. I think that would be wonderful. Because if you're going to leave, take some of your party home, you can come back in an hour or 2 hours, however long, to pick them up.
Sure.
Would you want to make use of the stadium restrooms? I mean, this could be a very large crowd, and then, of course, we have the cleanup and supplies for those to be considered. Or are
unless-
you planning porta-johns?
Porta-johns.
Rows of porta-johns?
I'm thinking probably both.
I think that, I anticipate that it would be.
Yeah, it's really hard to say because we're thinking this event this year, a lot of people are going to show up. Number one, it's on a Saturday. And number two, nothing happened last year. And I think people are just dying to get out and to see something like that. So, and that's why I know a lot of it seems like it's up in the air, and it really is. Ben and I talked about this a lot on the events committee. It's one of those balancing acts. You know, we really want to come together and give the village and the people within the village a really good show. It's going to take a lot of coordinated effort. It really is, between the village and the school board and, you know, the police and fire departments. It shows, I think, if we can do this, the one step closer to where we really want to be unified as, you know, all four entities coming together. So I know we're asking for a lot, and the volunteers, you know, we really are looking for that. If Ms. Boer, if we need to pay for things, I'd have to talk to the events committee and talk to Mr. Lee about that, see what kind of budget that we have. Yeah, I'm hoping that we can work everything out. And
Would your
give-
vendors have a participation fee? If they did, maybe that's where some of that cleanup
They would.
comes from.
Yeah,
If-
they
In
would
other
have
words,
to-
to be there, you have to pay a
There's an
participation
ordinance-
fee.
There's an ordinance within the village for food trucks. And
Yeah.
they have to have a license. You can either get a 1 day or a 30-day or a year license. So we'd have to talk about that and make sure that they're registered with the village and collect their fee. And yes, we very well
And put
could
a
use
cleanup
that
fee
fee
in
towards
there.
the cleanup.
Put a cleanup fee.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times,
What I'm-
Doug,
what
I
I'm-
think, as you know, if you look at Columbus with Red White, you sell those vendor spots, and that funds the extra police costs, the extra
Sure.
cleanup costs, you know, I mean, that's what
Yeah.
some of those fees have to go towards. So I think, I guess from my standpoint, we'd love to see the volunteers step up, but if not, we have to have a backup plan.
Exactly.
I mean, that's, you know, we obviously, you know, can't just leave the trash out there, so we're gonna have to work.
That's right.
The goal would be to have volunteers do it, and if we can't get that plan in place ahead of time, we have to realize that
Yeah, that's,
there's gonna have to be paid forces to come in, because who
Sure.
else is gonna do it?
yep. And I'll talk to Mr. Lee about that tomorrow. And we'll put those wheels in motion and see if we can't get volunteers.
Yes, if we can work together, it sounds like the concept is not unwelcoming to the board. I think we can use the grounds, it's just the details of the plan that we have a lot to work out. And certainly I'd volunteer to help out in any way I can, be a liaison and keep information. But board, if we just come back from this committee and share with you the detailed plan of where everything is, when it's going to happen, when it's proposed, then we can get a final say from the board. Does that
Derek,
sound
yeah,
good?
yeah.
There-
Derek.
yeah.
Saturday at 9? Or
Right.
For a donation,
For
for a
fundraising.
donation.
Yeah, and maybe it's a little bit of a fundraiser.
Right, a fundraiser for them, they may do that.
Group
Mm.
could come together and we use that.
It's a good idea.
This is how we're getting that.
Yeah,
Sure.
can't get both.
We just open it up.
It won't work.
I think that's a good idea.
Very good idea.
And I would also like to throw this out there too, and I might be naive saying this, but I'm just gonna say it because I do believe in good people. If they got a place to throw trash, they're generally gonna put the trash in where it belongs. The problem that you run
Oh, I
into-
disagree. I'd
I-
like
I
to see
disagree
that.
with-
but If you've been
I
to one of our
disagree with that
football
too.
games,
We've been at the games.
You can look at like a Tractor Supply, they'll go and watch at a Tractor Supply, and a lot of Tractor Supply is an absolute mess. But I think that maybe if they had, trash cans or something, they could go down close by, I think a lot of people would find it. I mean, and even if not all people did it, it would significantly cut down on trash to get out there.
Yeah.
You had a team from 5 to 6, and then another team 6 to 7.
the biggest thing is,
Yeah, so
right,
that they're doing it consistently, so it's not at 9 o'clock, we're gonna clean the entire place.
Is it an option to do the next day? Because it's gonna be better.
Dark.
I don't think you would get it because the next day is the 4th and people will be with their picnics and
Maybe
things.
early in the morning.
I guess,
lighting conditions
yeah.
would be better. I
is
think
a
maybe
couple
safety.
good and bad to
Sunday
that,
morning,
having
right?
experience with this
That would be a
is,
Sunday
it
morning.
depends on the weather.
I don't think.
If
that's
it's
it.
raining and windy, you don't want to wait till the next day because then it's everywhere and it's wet and you can't get it. So really, the weather condition plays into the cleanup the day after.
I think we do it like we do a lot of our events where they are consistently doing it throughout the evening.
But that
You're
is
gonna need
key,
that,
making
otherwise
sure
the
you also
trash
have
is gonna be
empty,
overflowing.
Right.
We've seen that.
empty containers.
Yeah,
If
we
they
don't have
overflow, it gets
football
worse.
games. I mean, our crews had to go in on Saturday and do a lot of
Yes.
sweeping out the stands because no matter how many cans we put out or recycled cans, we still end up with a mess in the stadium. It's certainly less of a mess than it could be, but it's still a mess.
Well, and
then
that
it gets
leads
on
to-
the field, and we've got to clean that very carefully. So there's a lot to this. I'm not saying it can't be done. It's just we have to plan very carefully.
That
Good
leads to,
execution.
we want to limit like all those little candy wrappers and stuff too.
So, Tim, are you on the committee?
Well, now, I mean, not technically, but Ben talks to me regularly, sends me some emails about it. We had the original committee just to do the fireworks, I guess. And now you guys have expanded it, obviously into events and everything else. And then Doug emailed me about this stuff, and that's when I kicked it to you and just
I
asked him.
heard it from Ben.
I just asked Doug to come because he emailed about it, and I said, the whole board needs to hear the whole plan. So, no, I'd be happy to participate in any of those
Certainly
future
form some
discussions.
type of, mapping out of the day and where things are that we can present so everybody's on the same page on what we're authorizing. We can start working internally on any volunteers that might be able to help with audio video and clean up, as far as our maintenance people be in there to do what you need for lights.
I mean, we'll have
boosters.
minimal staff already on, so I guess from the school board, we'll have 2 people working
We have
maintenance.
day, Saturday and Sunday personnel.
Right. So I mean, we'll
Okay, it's
certainly
just-
dedicate those folks to assisting at this, they'll be
Sure.
assisting them, on our regular,
We can help out
Schedule.
on Friday even with some setup.
Right.
and getting
it's
things
the
out.
above and beyond. We're
It's
just
the
not gonna be
evening.
able to have
It's
to
the
get people.
evening when they need people running lights.
Right.
and all that.
Well,
And
and,
being there to
that's-
Handle breaks.
Well,
Reach
and
out
I'm
to the
willing to
boosters.
help as well. If you need some help, I'm willing to help.
I also, if we're gonna booster groups, if we're gonna let them run concessions, make some money, maybe they can get some volunteers as well to help in other areas. So, there's a
Sure.
lot of areas we can work on
And
here.
we'll make sure that we continue to have the 2 of you in our email chain
Great.
with that. And that
Glad to help any way we can. This is what a
That way you
community
guys
is all
can
about.
distribute out where you think you need to.
Sure.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything that's alarming to us. It's just
No.
working out the details.
And I have the numbers for you as far as our actual capacity.
Okay.
We just can't advise on what we.
4-H groups.
That's great.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
You're right.
So,
We also pick out like Boy Scouts of America,
A lot of the youth groups aren't, Friday, Saturday night isn't as difficult to get the youth groups to come out to clean. So there might be some opportunities there. Obviously, they'll have to have supervision.
It's amazing what students will do for a pizza party at the
That's
end.
right.
It is.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank
And,
you very
Yeah.
much for your time.
We
Mr.
look forward to
Dixon. I
working with you
appreciate
to make this happen.
All right. thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Chief.
Very exciting.
Hey, Chief, while we have you, are there any concerns or anything you want to bring up, I guess, on your side from the safety that we have to be aware of that we haven't spoke about?
No, so the only concern that I have is kind of the split up of venue, and the fact that there's going to be a different crowd at JYA than there is here. I think as we grow older and larger as a municipality, I think that Doug hit the nail right on the head. We want to start working, unified with each other. So then that way we have everybody on the same page, create the safest environment that we possibly can. And I envision, doing that with fire department, with the city, and I would even be willing to have a conversation with my administrator to say, hey, now that we're getting to a certain level, maybe we need to think about actually bringing our own streets departments in so they can assist and help with the cleanup of the area too, just like a lot of other municipalities do. So security-wise, though, I mean, it's one of those things where anything can happen. I think as a whole, I think it's going to be a very safe event. There is the potential for problem, but I also believe that people know that the enforcement's out there. They're going to do the right thing for the most part. And there can be little squabbles and stuff. The officer's job is not to watch the firecrackers. It's there to watch the crowd. And I want to assure the board that that's what they're going to do.
I think our biggest concern will just be, we'll have a few areas that we would like to keep people off of,
And we can help
our
enforce that too.
softball field, there's going to be certain areas where we just don't want people viewing from because we've got a lot invested in the turf and the infield and everything else. So, I mean, we can always sign it and mark it off as best we can, but we'll need eyes on it once in a while throughout the
Absolutely.
evening.
So there'll be an officer that will be in the physical launch site. So that person's job is just to make sure that nobody enters that 500-foot radius. There's going to be an officer that's going to be assigned to the lower lot. So basically right where the track is to ensure that nobody actually enters the track. I believe there's going to be 2 officers that are going to be assigned to the stadium itself to roam in that area. There's going to be additional 2 officers that are going to be assigned above the stadium in that backfield if we were to have people in that area. If they're not, however, we can ship those 2 officers to another location. And we're going to have an additional officer work the food truck. As I grow larger as an organization, in the future, I'll start adding more people. I'll have 2 officers that will be on patrol within the community handling calls. There'll be a total of 3 cruisers in the parking lot that night. And like I said, as we grow, I'll even get to the point where there'll be plainclothes officers who will be walking in the crowd just to ensure that everybody's doing the right thing, walking in the parking lots
Yeah.
and whatnot.
All right. Sounds great.
I appreciate your planning.
Thank you.
Anytime. And
Thank you.
I also wanted to I got the podium real quick. I wanted to, even though she's not here, thank Mrs. Cox for doing the things that she does with SOS. I've had the opportunity to work with her a couple of times, and I can say she's very passionate about what she does, and she's very professional, and it's been a pleasure to work with her. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Swager, the next topic I've been asked to put on here is the Facility Construction Committee project update, our renovation project.
Deb, do you have?
It's behind your back. We're ready. We're going to cover 2 subjects this evening, the Gary Chambers Sports Performance Center. And we're also going to take a second look at the new building, the refurbished building of Searfoss, which will be called the Intermediate School. So let's start with Gary Chambers Sports Performance. And thank you, Tim, for the wonderful sign. It looks a great deal better than the one that was faded, and we replaced it, and thank you very much. So this is an inside look at the facility now. You'll notice all the new equipment, and there are a few finishing touches that need to be put into place yet. We have some signage and some exciting things that we haven't brought in yet, but it's getting very, very close. There's a good look at the weight. Debbie likes to demonstrate those just to see how much she can lift. So we get a lot of chuckles about that. The bleachers obviously are the walls that you see that are 5 feet high. So that serves another purpose, and it should be impervious to any kind of damage that we would normally see in a weight room. So that's pretty exciting. But the most exciting thing to me is the fact that we put windows in it, which is an inspiration. You can look out as you're working out, and you can see the stadium, which is what the desire would be for most of the young men and women that are using the facility. They want to play in that stadium. A lot of wonderful equipment, thanks to the boosters and thanks to the school board's participation and the money that was contributed. I notice we still have a couple big pieces of equipment that are not in there yet, but will be. I think it's called the slide, is that right? Sled, excuse me. Well, it's kind of a slide. I was going to use it as a slide, but I think a sled would work. So it's at the end of the room. And so that's a bird's eye view of the weight room. And we'll continue to work on that. The exciting part that came out in the development of the weight room was that, first of all, it was a very dark room, very difficult to clean. With the new flooring, it's just been magnificent to clean. The new structure in the roof has made it very pleasant to look at, very unique for a weight room. So we're relatively thrilled that that all came together. Any questions on the weight room?
Can I add one thing?
Yes, Debbie.
I'd like to give a shout out to the coaches and the students. I will say that since they've started using it 2 weeks ago, every single time I've gone out there to check on something or do something, every single weight has been put back into its place. And I know one thing that they're really emphasizing with every single group, whether it's just in between classes or in between sessions, is that every weight goes back where you got it, so that if you were to walk in at any time that there weren't actively students in there, you could expect to see it just like this. And one of the nice things about the design of the equipment is everything is stored right on that.
The discipline and the pride of the room has been extremely evident, and all coaches have participated to
So
make
I'd
that
like
happen.
to thank our coaches and students for doing that each time.
Sure. Any questions on the weight room? Okay, off we go.
Fantastic.
This is the big moment unveiling for the refurbishing of the Searfaw School, which will be called the Intermediate School. There are a lot of rumors about what classes will be in that building. To my knowledge, that is still a decision the board needs to make based on some data that we're still considering. So how that's going to be used yet, I can't say, or at least I don't know. If anybody knows more than that, they should tell me, but I don't know that we have any more up-to-date information. However, the rooms that were existing in the old Searfoss building, there's the floor plan. And you can see right in the, I'm going to point to it, Jim, where we've added on the new addition, right where the restrooms are, come on that side of the right side of the restrooms. Yeah. Those are the existing walls, and that's the old part of the building. And if you kind of go right straight up through the design, all this part will be new. There you are. And so you can see how many classrooms have been added. We will expand the kitchen area. There have been a lot of questions about why do you need a kitchen that large? But one of the compelling reasons we need to look at a full service kitchen is that we don't have one next door in the middle school, and we found that to be really quite an encumbrance, as we are mandated by the state now to serve all the lunches that we are, and it's a free program. So therefore, the demand on the cafeteria has sizably increased. So I'm not sure what those areas look like, but I know in this building, we're ready for whatever belies our future. Okay, now we are, nope. This is the office area. It's hard to really see how it looks yet, but what we like is the one area there where the window is. You can look through right beside the door, Tim. See the window? And that will be a drop-off window. You don't have to go in the building anymore to drop off your tennis shoes to your child or your lunch or whatever it might be. So that's going to be a really expedient way to facilitate dropping off things from parents to child. And also with some of the COVID concerns and even future flu and so forth, it's going to be a cleaner way not to have a number of people going through the actual office. Certainly they're welcome if it's necessary, but it won't be something that we have to do since we have a drop-off window. So the next slide. That is, look at the hallway. And Debbie, do you want to explain the red portion down there, right there?
That is, if you walk into Sears House right now, not in the glass door, but the other door, and you turn down the left hall in front of the office is right here. This is the window that currently looks into the atrium. That will look into the media center.
Pretty exciting, and they've noticed the bulkheads, notice the red stripes up there, or red strip above the hallways. I don't think we have the comparison slide, but without putting those red bulkheads in place, it really looked long and forlorn. The hallways did not have a character, so that's one of the things that we decided to do. The board there, whoops, that's all right. The bulletin board that you see there was a dedication gift from the Yost family, and we preserved that, and it will be refurbished and will be bright and match the red on the windows. And again, those windows are right across from the existing principal's offices, and you'll be able to see into the computer area and the library area. So we're pretty excited about that. I think it will be a nice addition and give it that wow factor when you walk into that building. And this would be a typical classroom. This is the computer media center, right? That's right, it isn't typical class, it's a media center. And we're looking at how we might add some more red in the ceiling area. Haven't done some of those aesthetic things, committed to some of those aesthetic colors yet. But it's exciting to see how well organized it will be, colorful. The floor is not the color that we're going to be using, but it's something that we're just showing at this point. This would be the other side of the media center. I'm looking at, yes. And that is a retractable wall, which can also be used as a whiteboard. So by using a retractable wall there, it allows us to expand to facilitate the studies of more of our students. And this is a picture of a renovated old classroom with the trusses showing there. And we don't know exactly what colors those are going to be yet, but quite a change. New flooring, new paint. They've hidden a lot of the electrical, which was in the beautiful conduit pipes that you used to walk in and see in these rooms. We're going to eliminate as much of the conduit pipe as possible, so it will be an attractive, contemporary looking classroom. We were quite impressed with this red strip under the windows to give it color. So that's one idea there. These are the new classrooms, which would be a sample of the new classroom. And notice that the windows no longer have the white fillers in the windows. They're full-length windows. That's going to add a tremendous amount of lumens or light in the windows. Each window will have an inset of a shade, so you can adjust and darken a room if you want to. So that's going to make a tremendous difference in that building. That's the cafeteria. Taking out, Debbie didn't have time to color this afternoon, but we'll be taking out the yellow walls. The walls are gold yellow right now. We will not be using those. So we're going to paint those similar to what we saw, the beautiful change in our gymnasiums where we use Santa Glaze or a product therein that actually you can paint the walls. And it does hold. So there's another view of the stage that many people would remember as children. You probably spent many times with little plays in that area. That's going to remain. It will be a carpeted area, and it will have the curtains back in its place. And we look, and if you didn't notice, the new tables there will be a godsend. Our old tables were let's just say they were out of date. I can't even think of a wonderful description to tell you about them, but they will be gone. This is one of the corner units in the new area. It's a small pull-out area. Is that what we're going to call it, Debbie? And then with the low lockers and with just some interest there. Again, there will be coverings over the windows. So if you have something special going on in there, people can't see in there. But it adds a nice, we call it eye candy for that area. And it takes away the boredom of just an institutional school. So that will be a feature. This is the back side of the building. And again, notice that all of the pillars are out of the window. That's just extraordinary, I think. So this is the Arboretum off to the left where the people are sitting to give you another perspective of where you are. And it looks pretty stately, I think. I really like it. Does anybody have any comments and thoughts? This is your time to do it. We haven't put any nails in it yet, so if somebody has an idea or suggestion that we ought to be looking at, this is the way to do it. The downspouts will be the color of the building with transitioning into the red and into the brown. So they may end up 3 colors, but certainly they're not going to be a dominant looking appendage on that building. So we'll see those blending in rather than sticking out, which is what they are right now.
I think it looks great. And you've added an additional set of restrooms, you said.
Got a what?
We're adding an additional set of restrooms.
Yes, ma'am.
And then how many additional classrooms?
6, is it 6, Debbie? Did we get 7? We've got some pullouts. Are we counting those? 6 classrooms.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We're adding a staff rep. Clinic as well. We'll have a clinic and staff.
And you'll see quite a change in the front of the building. Point to the dark. The vestibule, that will be certainly, it's a tremendous safety move for that school. For many years, you were able to just walk into the school without any security. This is a tremendous move forward that we've invested in that vestibule. So you'll see a lot of change in that administrative area. The clinic will be in there, the reception area. It's hard to tell from that picture, at least for me, what it's going to look like. The floor plan almost helps me more. So any questions? And I can't wait to hear Marcy and Janet's comments about the building. You don't have to do it in the meeting. I'm anxious to hear what you're seeing the changes could afford the students as we move forward into this building. Certainly the space is a plus. If not, thank you. And most of all, thanks for all the people that have worked on this. Debbie Seibel has been first and foremost and at the forefront of this, as well as Tim and Kim and the architects and the construction team. So we continue to meet about every 2 weeks. We'll be increasing that to about once a week as we start laying the foundation very soon. I think the projected date is at May 6th, if I got that right. We don't hold us to that because it's going to depend on a lot of things. And right now, it was the right thing for us to do to, I'll say, pull the trigger on this building. A year ago, we could have saved a little money because obviously cost of supplies was less a year ago. This year, we're paying more. If we wait any longer, we're going to pay more than we did the 6 months before. It's time to either decide to do it or not do it. And the decision was to go forward. And I think we'll never be sorry that we have expanded this building. So that's all I had. Tim, do you have a report?
Nope, that's everything. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Anyone else have any other reports? We'll go on to the technology one, or?
Yes, Ruth Ann had asked that we place the classroom and technology fees issue on for discussion this evening.
I did want to make a comment too. I'm still struggling. It's a personal thing. I'm struggling with fees for kindergarten students who do not take a computer home. The one-to-one may or may not be something we need to do. Certainly we need the access to all computers in their rooms. I'm not saying they shouldn't have access, but they're a little bit different than a senior or high school, 9-12, that would be taking those computer homes, and you're subject to much more breakage and much more damage. So I'm struggling with that fee. I'm just saying that's a personal feeling. Come back at me, let me know what you think. But without that, I sometimes question, why do we charge a kindergarten student $20 for a fee?
I guess K5, none of those, it'll be K5.
It's really K5, and they won't be taking them home. And I just struggle with the fact that we're putting a fee on right now. Now, maybe this is a new program. It's our first year to go one-to-one. And maybe in a year from now, I could see that you'd say, absolutely, and this is the data that supports that. This is why you should do it. Absent of that, I'm just struggling with it. So I'm waiting for someone to convince me why we would have to do that right now.
I mean, I think it's valid, and I think that you share an opinion that many parents will have, right? Which is if my child's not taking it home. So I agree. I think it's a hard bullet to bite, asking them to pay for something that, regardless, we will have to sort of provide for them in some way, shape, or form. But I also see the extra expenditure that it will cost us. So, no, I mean, I validate your thoughts. I mean, and I don't know if maybe the figure we've decided on is the right figure. Maybe that's just something that we need to consider tweaking in the K5 level. Maybe we want to do less. Maybe we want to do, I mean, I'm open to it because I do agree that we will probably get some pushback for the K5.
6 to 8 do not take the computers home.
Correct.
So whatever policy it is, if you want it,
It's got to be
change the
fair.
policy, it's actually K through
When I-
But the 6 to 8 are carrying them from classroom to classroom.
8. Classroom to classroom.
They would be carrying
That's
them.
correct.
So there's
But not
an
home.
additional risk.
As would portion of 4th and 5th.
So
that's
they're
what we
more
read, fourth and fifth.
portable.
I guess my question to Deb Seibel on this, because I know we went through the fees and we reduced student fees. We waived them this year, but we even reduced, do you know how much? I don't recall how much in the K5 we reduced, because we went through, because how much?
They're at 50 currently.
How much?
We didn't pay anything last year.
50 per grade.
50?
Yes.
Would we,
Right.
would we,
I guess,
Oh,
and to be clear,
Sure.
everyone paid the $50 in K5, right? Except for this year, because we waived it as part of COVID. But there's a K5 student fee of $50. But then we also had additional workbook fees, or not? Is that included in that 50? So what fees did we eliminate 6 through 8? And those were like $8 to $12 a piece or more? I guess not to some, we did make the step last year to start reducing those fees in those courses because we weren't some of those books, but
So
this
because
is more, I guess, really the question to me is this technology fee or is it a device insurance plan it's a little bit of both.
What if we made student fees for K-5 $30 instead of 50, and then still did the technology fee of 20, but overall they're still paying $50. It's just 30 for the student fee and
And
20 for the
inclusive of a
and
$20.
inclusive of. I mean, we would separate it for that, but that way parents aren't paying more. I mean, that's probably going to maybe be a Kim behind closed doors conversation if we can reduce the student fee.
If you want, if you give me 1 second, I can tell you what we've spent on things that would have been paid for student fees this
Okay.
year.
Right.
Great.
And before you give that number, the other thing that crossed my mind, we're going to do interactive touchscreen boards in Searfoss or the intermediate school. But as we move forward, we're going to put that everywhere. We like those, and we're going to put them in every school. So how much do we really need, and how should we look at those dollars? I'm just asking questions. I don't know, maybe it's right. Maybe I like your thought with, maybe you include it, it becomes $50 for the whole thing and you don't break it out. I don't know. I just asked that question.
Well, as I said at the last meeting, I didn't think it was all worked out. It was a little early to be making that decision for technology fees.
And I guess the other side of it is, could we not, if we find this year through our experiment, because we've never had what we're proposing now, if it doesn't work out and we really feel that it's absolutely essential that we add a fee because the breakage is so tremendous for the utilization, because it's something the data doesn't, I just don't know the data right now. I'm struggling with it.
I guess
It's not a right and wrong answer.
We know we're going to have damage. Is this board willing to just pay for that damage, or are we going to have a fee for it? That really, or you have to have a policy where the parents pay for it. That's where I struggle not having a fee is we're just going to pay for damage to computers and suck it up as the board and taxpayers pay for anyone's damage if we don't do portion of this.
I mean, we pay for the damage now.
They don't take them home.
I mean, but if one's damaged in the classroom, we pay for it now. I mean,
Correct.
I'm not saying
and
I
they'll go
agree.
up
I'm just throwing
significantly.
out the opposing viewpoint that we pay for it either way.
Previously, they would have, but now, like at the high school, they signed a form,
They
and the parents
No, I'm
are
just saying in
responsible
the
for it.
elementary school today, we're not one-to-one. If a kid drops a computer, we fix that computer, right?
I agree. I'm
Yeah.
just saying previously, you
Yeah.
can't say that that's
Yeah.
going on totally now.
What do you have, Kim? Do you solve our questions?
Well, I can tell you I've got them broken out by school. We've spent $33,310 on things that would have been covered by student fees at the elementary school. If you use 800 students, roughly, that's about $41.25 per student.
And so you say we've paid out 33,000 for things. I just don't know like, give me an example of what are the, yeah.
Consumables.
There's the Scholastic mailers.
Okay.
uh,
I just wasn't sure what was
the
in that
agendas,
category.
The student agendas, some workbooks.
Okay.
In the technology world, it's just a funding question. Where do you want the money to come from to pay for all these items, right? And, as a member of the technology committee, we're spending a lot more money today on technology than we ever have, right? Ruth Ann has said, we've looked at this, at the new boards, and we've looked at all the technology, and it's just a funding question. Where do we get the money to pay for all these things? Where do we get money to repair these things? How do we have ownership of people that are using these assets that we've given them? How do we ensure that they take ownership of those items? And it is a hard thing. If you're a kindergartner, do you really know what ownership really is?
Can you spell ownership?
Well, if
You know-
if you have ownership, then the students should be able to, if they're carrying them from classroom to classroom, do they need to have some kind of a carrier for it? Do they need to have a special backpack that they
Yeah, I
can
don't-
carry
I
during
don't
the
know.
day, which isn't part of our,
Yeah, I
You
don't
know, they're
know.
not allowed
I'd like to
Backpack.
ask Janet and Marcy, should we have a carrier for it?
They're not going to move them.
At their level, they're not
At
moving.
their level.
And 4 to 5.
Janet doesn't think they're going to be doing it.
Yeah, but I have a question about that.
She doesn't think that they'll be moving
Okay, but I have a question about the logistics of that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just trying to picture it in my head. So if you're saying like each teacher will have a set of 22 laptops, but then that's not one-to-one because isn't it supposed to be theirs? And so we had said like if it breaks, we know who it belongs to and it's uploaded with all their things. So okay. But then they technically share that with multiple other number 16. And I don't have a problem with that. I'm just saying parents will say, but it's technically one-to-one in other classes when my child is sharing this computer with 3 other kids. So what if that breaks? Am I paying a fee? What if that breaks? And how do I know that it was my kid and not the 3 other number 16? I'm just throwing all those things out there. That's gonna.
And that's the nice thing about a fee. It covers it and they don't have to worry about who breaks it. If we don't charge it, now we'll be tracking down who broke it.
So is it a technology fee or is it an insurance fee? That's what you gotta decide.
I'm 100%. Yeah. Yes. Mhm. Mhm. And
Maybe the,
no, and I want to be very clear. I think your logic of having a set for the classroom makes 100, like that makes sense to me. I think that that's the smart way to do it. I just wanted to throw out there that parents are going to say, but for 4th and 5th, it's not truly my child's computer. So do I really have to pay the fee? I'm
maybe the question
just
is,
preparing us for that
Then
pushback.
you
has the
wanted to
board
say something
decided
back
we're
there, too.
re-implementing fees? I mean, that's.
Yeah, we
has
did.
the
We voted
board
on it.
decided that we're going to
We
re-implement
have to decide
fees?
that.
We already did. We voted on it.
The board has established the fees
We already did.
already at the previous
Which
meeting.
is what I
And
said, we should be
I
waiting
might
on it.
point out, if I may, I've passed a handbook. It's called the Use of Technology Device Handbook for our district that we had planned to present at our meeting with the rest of our handbooks. If you turn to page 5 on that particular document, it might help inform the conversation. In there, you see the fees that were established. Wanted to know what those were before proceeding with this.
I saw that. I
They've
just,
established a fee at K through 5 for 20, 6 through 8, 30, 9 through 12, 40.
and you're not wrong.
And the
You're-
items that are listed here, just to put perspective on this, it's not just for fixing computers, okay? The perspective is that each of these devices were $300 with the device and the license. There's other software supports, filters, et cetera, that the district purchases to protect them. And that there are also machines that need to be replaced periodically. I believe, Debbie, the plan is we'll get 4 to 5 years for these devices. And so when you take a look at the total investment per child to go to a one-to-one environment, then it was a partnership with the parents to have that type of educational device provided. So the rationale in our pre-board meetings that we had with leadership, and I believe Tim and Amanda, you were in on those conversations. Originally, we were looking, as many other districts in our area do, we were looking at $40 per student throughout the district. Then from those conversations, we felt that there's less movement, less chance of damage, while they still have a cost of $300 per and a replacement cost in the future, that partnership would be there to help with the consumable portion of these devices over time. So one, it was to act as a insurance policy toward fixes, giving parents giving one accidental fix. Anything intentional would be parent replacement. But if you had an accidental drop, broke a screen, the first one will be covered by the district. That would come out of the budget where these funds feed. So that's the insurance kind of ideology behind that portion. But then you have management license that we have to have for these. There's filters that we purchase as a district beyond the $300 that we felt would be a partnership as well and come out of these fees, as well as the replacement cost every 4 to 5 years, that we would have some of this coming back in. And then the increase from that meeting prior to your last board meeting, it was decided to have, because of this the very nature of there being less movement of the machines in the elementary, to reduce that from 40 to 20. Since they're moving classes more, there's a little more risk at the middle school to increase that to 30 than high school, where students are taking them home, moving from classes. And we will also look at a replacement where potentially with next year's freshmen, where those fees, once they pay 4 years on those fees from freshman to senior, we would simply let them take those devices with them. So I just wanted to put all that out there to help inform this discussion.
I think we were all aware of that. I think what happened for me was, I know Ann brought up a concern about the vagueness of the language when we first, yes, you're right, number 5 was approved, but we also said the language does not seem to fit where we really need to be. We said, well, we'll catch it when we get to the handbook. That comment was made. The question for me, I guess in the future, whatever we have to do this year, because it just seems like our discussions are always much later than what I'd like to have them be. It would have been nice if we'd have put the package together and said, kindergarten needs this much for consumables, this much for technology, and boom, that's the price. But so now we've got another $20 onto their $50 fee, which is going to be a pretty stiff number. So if the board's in favor of that, we take the vote, or you just pass it on because we already have voted for it. I just, as a point of order, brought it up because I know that there's discussion on this board, whether they talk about it or they don't. I know they're talking about it.
And quite frankly, whether there's a fee or not, we bring you the information and ask you to consider the fees because we think fiscally it's a prudent thing for a board to do. It is not out of line with what many other districts do in a one-to-one environment. And so we bring it to you for that consideration. We think it's being good. It's applying good business sense.
Well, I added up, in 13 years of K through 12, you'd pay $370 in fees. You'd get 3 laptops over that time period, costing the district close to $1,000. And our proposal would be for freshmen above, you'd be getting that laptop when you go home. So in 13 years, you'd pay a total of $370 for a $300 laptop, and $70 would be going toward replacement for 3 laptops over your lifetime. So the taxpayers would still be picking up $630 or more of that fee. So it's really 1/3 of the cost of what would be invested in that student. I mean, that's what I was just trying to do the math here for the lifetime, what you'd be paying for.
And not every student is going to have to pay the fee, right? Because if you're on
Correct.
If they qualify for free lunch,
yeah,
then
free
their
lunch,
fees are waived,
then
all
the
fees are waived for
fees
classroom
away.
fees.
So it's
Free
not
and
every
reduced,
student that you're going to see that has to pay free lunch.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be,
Did
not
they-
every student's going to have to pay.
Did they still fill out the form for free and reduced lunch this year, even though they're getting free lunch through the USDA program, which has been extended to June 2022?
That's a great question.
We continue to encourage parents to fill out the free and reduced lunch form. It helps with our counts.
Mhm.
It helps with our total. It also helps the district when you're going for grants and those types of things. However, recently I have seen where it looks like the federal government's going to extend that lunch through next year now, not
June of
just September.
2022?
22.
So I'm not sure what that does for our child find, not child find, but our our free and reduced lunch identification project. We're still working on that. So again, we'd like to have that information so that we can be able to say, this is number of families that qualify for free or reduced. But then the reason I'm a little apprehensive here, because we don't know exactly what the threshold of poverty will be with all the numbers that are changing nationally right now. So I can't answer that concretely, but we certainly would like to still be able to monitor that, to be able to help our district in knowing that percentage of our district that is qualifying for free or reduced lunch.
Well, it's been a good discussion, and I thank you for taking the time, because I know it has been discussed among us, and it's nice to be able to hear everybody out here so we know where we are.
And it's a hard one. It's a hard one to have to ask, and it's hard for us to take it all on us, so.
Okay,
And this is a look ahead. Again, we just passed out tonight. We fully intended to put that with our other handbooks to give you prior to our May meeting. I thought, given this conversation tonight, you might like to have this to look at. Certainly, if there's things that are concerning or additions, deletions, get those to us as we look to prepare over the next week your read-ahead materials.
Can we get the totals on the middle school and high school for the
Yeah, for the fees,
Middle school, we paid $13,948. And that's primarily for workbooks and art supplies and paperback books for the English classes.
Do you have the breakdown per student like you did for the elementary?
No, I don't.
I was just curious if it was,
by course.
I was curious if it was comp,
it's,
just,
in middle school, it's based on what courses you take, so it's harder to break down, whereas in K-5,
Okay.
everyone takes everything. Yeah.
well, my thought was like, because at the elementary, it was like 41 per student, which was very close to what our student fee was, so I was just curious.
If you take
I
band
know,
in middle
it's
school,
hard
you
to-
pay,
I know
whereas
it's hard
you
'cause the
don't- you
fee's
don't have
different
it,
for
so it's
everyone.
harder to.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. Huge range. Thank you.
Science fee for $5. We had, I believe it was a language arts fee for $12.
And that's the one, Deb, we talked about reducing or getting rid of, and that's why I think some of these are. Coming out. They were gonna come out,
Anyway,
yeah, last year, that before we waived all fees, the intent was to reduce a lot of those fees. If it was a core
does a
class,
kindergarten student have to elect to use the school's computer? Is that a cost savings? For some parents, I don't know, I just asked.
no, because you're gonna, and that's what we talked about before, because they don't have the software, the program, everything on there, so you have to use the
You
school
have to
one.
use
not optional.
So, what we had discussed in some of those books was if it was a core class.
I
you
assumed
know,
that was the answer, I just wanted to hear it, because I'm sure
Right,
there are people
because
listening.
I just bought 3 Chromebooks for my kids,
Yeah,
of course, this year.
Well, and Angela spoke about that because her IT time goes infinitely higher when people use outside
sure.
book, Chromebooks and stuff, because
It doesn't work.
technology problem doesn't, it doesn't work,
Well,
and then
maybe
it doesn't
We
sync
bought a
up with
brand new
us.
Chromebook and
And the
Does it work
teachers
as someone
can't
from
have
home
them
transfers?
bringing their,
Yeah.
well, and Ruthie and the teachers can't have them bringing theirs in because the teachers might not know how to use that and log them
Oh, yeah.
in.
And the
then
filters.
their own
The
issues.
filters.
That's
But
just,
since we're live, it's nice to have the question.
Yeah.
it's a
Doesn't
good
mean-
question.
There's a good question.
And
mean, there's a
I
good
did
answer.
ask that.
And
Okay,
the privacy filters are also an issue when it's not a school.
Do you have the high
I
school
knew that was. the
Deb, if you
We're
don't
putting
mind,
you on
if
the
you could
spot
work on
right
those
now.
handbooks and let us know what the fees were going to be, that'd be great. I appreciate it. I think that's a great conversation. I think it'll to be continued.
She's got the high school number.
Oh,
Okay.
cool. The high school was $18,852.
So that's like 65,000 total.
The total is $66,112.
That's what we covered in student fees this year.
Was that an intentional cost?
She choked on
Was
that
it-
number.
Was that what that was?
I'm glad my kids are through school. There you go.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
All right.
Just kidding.
Any
Good
other
discussion.
discussion?
Oh, but it was a good discussion.
Can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
We have an executive session.
Not that I know of.
Oh, I thought you
Yes.
had.
it's on here.
We always put it on in case.
It's
there's a
always
need.
on there just in
Okay.
case we want to use it. But
You have an update?
no, we'll send it out when we get it tomorrow.
Don't you want to have
You don't
a
wanna-
discussion where you can look in our eyes and see how it's playing?
We're good.
We're good.
We'll get it.
This is unusual times, Tim Swager. We've
It's
never
the
done
COVID.
it this way.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes.